So welcome to the Elizabeth Public Library's Local History and Special Collections Department. And today's program, I'm going to talk about all the different genealogical collections we have within our department. So I'm going to start us off first with, let's see if I can get it to go. So the different collections we have a Genealogy Reference collection. And part of that is getting a new genealogy reading room. The local history department and this entire floor that we're located on the third floor of the Elizabeth Public Library has been closed to the public since COVID. And one of the benefits of that has been that we've been able to do a lot of renovation work. And one of the new renovations we're doing is we're creating a formal genealogy reading room, which will house our genealogy reference collection. I'm also going to go over our microfilm collection and digitized newspapers, our local genealogical materials in the local history archives. And in the end, I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek at the new local history reading room. I just want everyone for this sneak peek. We were hoping the room would be built already, but everything got pushed back because of COVID, and final construction begins on this coming Monday, but I will be able to show you some of the work that's already been done. So in this image below, you can see what used to be known as our periodicals desk. And back in the back is the entrance to the local history room. We have our microfilm and our microfilm readers. And this is basically looking into the space from the new genealogy reading room. So the new genealogy reading room is located on the third floor. It basically contains all our general genealogical reference materials and guides. Access to this collection, once the floor is open, which it currently isn't, will be Mondays through Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 7:45 p.m., Fridays 10 a.m. to 5:45 p.m., and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. Now, the hours may change as the library's public access hours change. So the first image you see here is looking from what used to be our periodicals desk into the new reading room. And this bottom image gives you a better idea of the size of the room. Now, one funny story that we do have to warn everybody about, on the bottom left-hand image, you'll see on the bottom of that image is a red hump with a cone near it. Apparently when the room was constructed in 1927, this whole wall used to be an exterior wall. When they did the 1960s renovation and they opened up the floor and leveled out the other floors, they hadn't leveled this space out. So there is a steel support beam that's in that ground. Since it's grandfathered in for us to make the access into the space, there will be small steps added there in the next couple months. This means that most people will be able to access that room. Unfortunately, anybody that's in a wheelchair would need to speak to staff members manning the desk, and they'll have to pull the materials for you. We tried to figure out other workarounds, but the only other workaround would be tearing out the entire wall and putting 8-foot long ramps, which would basically take up most spaces in both sides. But as you can see, we do have a pretty large collection in the space. And some examples of the materials in this collection are the National Encyclopedia of American Biographies, American Genealogical Biographical Index. In the case, we've had questions asked why we kept those two collections. The main reason is when we searched online, we saw that only portions of it have been digitized already. So we decided to keep the portions that aren't readily available online in the collection, so people have somewhere that they can look at it without us having to traipse and try to locate where they are online or any other location. We also have Daughters of the American Revolution lineage books. We have vital records handbooks, books on heraldry. We also have published materials on how to do research on different ethnic groups or countries of origin. And we also do contain a small collection of the genealogical standards to be board certified as a genealogist. As new editions come out, we do replace them. And there's actually a large order that's recently been placed. Obviously, during COVID, we didn't order as many materials, but the plan is to keep expanding on this collection. Now, everything in this collection has been cataloged, and if you have a Plainfield Public Library or you're part of an LMXAC library, all you would need to do is search the Elizabeth Main Library for genealogy as your subject heading, and you'll see most of these items will come up. So anything that has a GR call number, that refers to anything that's located within this genealogy reference collection. This collection is non-circulating, so it can only be used in-house. And these are other images of some materials in the collections. You see the source, Genealogy Online for Dummies. We have the Vital Records Handbook. And the second image is actually what the room looks like, well, a week ago. As you can see, there are archways that there is this freestanding glass panel wall in front of. What they did was that used to be our reading room behind that, and they enclosed it to make a large classroom to be used by our literacy volunteers and citizenship classes. When they did that, though, unfortunately, it did block wheelchair access into this space. Hence why we tried to open it up, but unfortunately we can't because of the steel structural beams there. But the space does have additional shelving. We have, like I said, we have more space to expand. And if there's ever any questions or issues, you can always speak to the staff member that's sitting on the desk just outside the room, and they can help you. So also across from that space is where we have our microfilm collection. And in our microfilm collection, the microfilm collection is accessible by appointment only currently. And appointments, we do require that they're made 2 weeks in advance, and that's to allow for scheduling of staff to be available to assist. And it's also because of the construction and renovations that we're doing in the space. We have to allow time for our our local history staff to be able to go in and move materials, move furniture and all that. So that's why we are requesting that anybody that wants to access our microfilm gives us at least 2 weeks notice, because that's how our schedules are usually made in the library. Our digital newspaper collection is available 24 hours a day through the library's website. And if you click, all you have to do is go to www.elizpl.org. All our digital newspapers are accessible in multiple locations on our website. You can either go under resources databases, you can go through departments, local history and special collections. And this is our local history page. We've cleaned it up a bit to make it a little bit simpler. So you can either go through digital resources, you can see it's there. So you have the Elizabeth Daily Journal, New York Times, and so on. You can also access it either through our local history tab or our genealogy tab. So we made sure that it's accessible in various ways. So I'm first going to focus on the microfilm collection. So our microfilm collection is comprised of Elizabeth City directories, and these cover from 1865 to 1971. We have the Elizabeth Daily Journal, which is our most heavily requested collection. We've so far digitized January 1872 through January of 1927 is currently on our website, but that would be expanded onto the April 8th, 1937 collection. And this digitization project has been funded both through the New Jersey Historical Commission grant and also through a history project grant from the county, from Union County. After that, everything from April 8th, 1937 through December 1991 is available only through microfilm. For the New Jersey Journal, we do have the microfilm covering 1779 through 1876, and there are some gaps in there. We also have the Elizabethtown Gazette, which is a predecessor to the Elizabeth Daily Journal. We have the Elizabeth Daily Monitor. We carry the Newark Evening News from 1958 to, I believe, August 1972. We have the Star Ledger on microfilm from January 1971 through December 2013. We also do have the New Jersey State Census from 1855 through 1915 and the United States Census for New Jersey from 1830 to 1910. To view exactly what we have and inventories of all these collections, again, it's just through the library's website. So if you go to local history collections and click on the genealogy tab, you will see under microfilm collection, if you click on any of these blue highlighted links, it will bring up a PDF inventory for you. So this is the Elizabeth City directory. It tells you what each reel has, the dates that it covers. Now we do have the full run on microfilm. Physical books, we have some gaps, basically because the books deteriorated over years. Now, for microfilm use, we do offer 2 microfilm readers. We have the Minolta reader, which is probably your standard microfilm reader. If you've seen them, use them in the past. And there is a printer attached to it where you can print out clippings and articles. We also have a newer digital scanner printer for the microfilm, which is our ViewScan printer. On this machine, you can actually clip articles, print them, save them onto USB flash drive, email them. You can also select how you want the file saved. It could be a PDF, a TIFF archival image, a PNG, a bitmap, or a JPEG. And staff are always available to help you utilize the machine and give you like a quick overview of how to work on it. So for our digital newspapers, the library has access to our own database for the Elizabeth Daily Journal. As I mentioned before, we've digitized January 1872, and we should by the end of this year be through April 8th of 1937. This does not require a library card to access. You just have to go onto the library's website, and you can either access it through the local history room page, or you can access it under our databases. You do not need a library card. The Union County Local Source, which is it's a group project between Libraries of Union County Consortium, is also available through it. And right now we have available 2008 through 2019. Again, we don't require a library card to access it. For the Star Ledger and the New York Times, you would need to have an active Elizabeth Public Library card. Now, one thing that we have been telling researchers, if they want to use any of our databases and they do not qualify for a general Elizabeth Public Library card, we do offer what is called an internet-only card. Those cards do give you full access to all our online databases. For those, you would need to come in, show proof of ID, and just tell them that you specifically want an internet-only card. Those cards are good for 6 months. They don't cost anything. You just renew it every 6 months, and that'll give you full access to all our databases, okay? So for the Star Ledger, the database we personally have, it gives you 24/7 access as long as you have an active card. You can see either text-only images of the newspaper, which cover 1989 to current. There's the image version, which basically gives you an image PDF of the actual entire newspaper for the date, and that goes as far back as 2017. And then there's a web only, which would be articles that were basically published on their website specific, and those go back to 2007. New York Times, we do have access 24/7 to. It works on a system where it gives you 48 access when you log in. You do have to have a library card. You're going to have to create an account utilizing your email for it, and then it automatically gives you 48 hours access to the newspaper. So every 48 hours, you would have to go in and go through the whole procedure and get the code to access it. So, sorry. Once we move into the actual local history archives. Now, when I say local history archives, I mean what we currently know as our local history room. Since we are getting an additional reading room built onto the space that I am actually sitting in right now that you can see behind me, this is all going to be just archives and storage. It's just going to be shelving for all our collections to protect them. So moving forward, we're going to be referring to the space as local history archives. And so our local history collection contains materials of interest that maybe would be our city directory collection. Now, our city directories do include Elizabeth city directories, which also start including Hillside, Linden, Roselle Park, once you start hitting the early to mid 1900s. There are some gaps, as I mentioned, because as you can see, some of the books are older and they're just decaying and they were never rebound. The ones in the black covers, those are all books that were rebound by the library years ago. We also have New Providence and Berkeley Heights, Plainfield, Rahway, Scotch Plains and Fanwood, Summit, Milburn and Springfield, Union and Union and Springfield, Westfield and Cranford, and Westfield alone. And as it shows on the slide, we do have some gaps. We don't have the full run for those, but we do have a good portion of it. We also do carry yearbook collections, also with gaps for certain dates. And as you can see, we have Baton High School, Benedictine Academy, Thomas Edison High School, Dwyer Tech Academy, Elizabeth High School, Holy Spirit School, Olga, which is Our Lady of Guadalupe Academy, Pingree, Rahway High School. I think we have like about 2 or 3 editions. Roselle Catholic High School, same thing. We have about 2 or 3 copies that were donated to the library. Sacred Heart High School, St. Mary's of the Assumption. St. Mary's of the Assumption, when they closed down about 2 years ago in 2019, they actually invited us in and they gave us all of their yearbooks that they had in their collection. So we should have just about every year for St. Mary's till their closure. The same applies to St. Genevieve's School. St. Patrick's High School, we only have a couple of editions. Thomas Jefferson High School, and then we have a couple of issues of the Elizabeth General Hospital Nursing School and Kane College. Now, for everything in the room and all these materials, they're all cataloged. So again, you can just go to the library's OPAC and you can access it through the Plainfield Public Library website or ours. You just go onto the catalog, enter what you're looking for, select Elizabeth, Maine as the location, and you'll see all our holdings. We made sure to have everything listed on there and any information. If there's ever questions, you can always call us and we can tell you. We also do have for some of these materials inventories available on our website as well. So we also have published family genealogies and biographies. And again, this whole collection is cataloged. This collection, we also do have the published records of the archives of the state of New Jersey. So if you've ever worked with them, they kind of give you extracts of wills. It's broken down by years and materials. So you'll have newspaper extracts, will extracts. I believe there might be some marriage records in them. And it just gives you an idea of what exists at the state archives. We also do have published registers and rolls of New Jersey men in various wars. And we also have published compiled indexes of wills and marriage records of New Jersey. And again, the whole collection has been cataloged so far. So you can just visit the catalog, search for it, and you'll see what we have available. Now, wish we would have taken a better picture. This gives you an idea of the mess that's going on in the room right now while we're doing renovations. So we have artwork all over the floor, and this isn't all of it. This is just the artwork that we're planning on putting up in the walls in the microfilm space. It was about 4 times that amount, and we've put some downstairs in storage. So our vertical files are the filing cabinets in the rear of that image. Our vertical files, especially our genealogy vertical file, they contain newspaper clippings, articles, biographies, and other images, postcards on various individuals and families from Elizabeth, Union County, New Jersey. That collection was collected by librarians as they did research. So anytime anybody asks us for remote research or for obituaries research, we always keep a copy and make sure to add it to the vertical file. It just simplifies anybody else having to do research again on the same people. And we've referred to it multiple times in the past, especially when dealing with like founding families like the Ogdens, Woodruffs, McGee's, and so on. So To view our current inventory or index the vertical file, you would again just go to the library's website. You would go to Departments, Local History, Special Collections, click on Genealogy, and it's one of the first things we have listed. So our genealogy vertical file, you just click on the link, say open. So it's a PDF document. We did make it searchable. So all you have to do is if you hit Control F on your keyboard, you can enter a name. And I just picked Smith. So you see it gave me Hyde Smith. You just go next. And it'll just list everybody with that last name. It gives you the date of death and then what we have, if it's an obituary, if it's an article. This collection is actually currently being worked on and updated right now. We do have hundreds of files to add to this of work that was done over the COVID closures. So this will be updated periodically and we'll be adding more names and everything. So if you don't see a name there, you can always email us and we can let you know if we've already done the research. If we haven't, then at that point, you would need to submit a remote research request form. And the remote research request form, again, the library's page, it's located right here on the page. It's highlighted in blue. You would just click on this. It's a PDF file. And we made sure to highlight this portion of the requirements. We do ask that you provide a date of death of the person that you're looking for, accurate to within 7 days. Now, sometimes we will do it if you can give us at least the month and the year. Anything beyond that, if you can't give us at least the month and the year, then we usually put off doing those and we'll let you know that you're welcome to make an appointment and come in and do the research yourself. Because since most of the collection is still on microfilm, it's a lot of microfilm for our staff to go through. We have made certain exceptions if it's somebody who is living out of state or out of the country. Those we're willing to work with, but we also limit how much we're actually going to provide as far as assistance towards it, because our staff is very limited. There's only 2 full-timers and 1 part-timer, and only 2 of us can do the remote research. But this form is a PDF. You can either print it, hand fill it in, and then scan it and email it to us. We will be updating this information as well on the website. There will be a new form that you can just fill out online and just email it, save it to your desktop and email it to us. And we do provide remote research assistance. Now, right now during COVID, as long as we're closed for COVID closures and still have modified hours, we do not charge for remote research at this time. Once the library gets back to normal, the fee is usually, I believe it was $10 for the first half hour, $15 each additional half hour of research. That may change. That's still up in the air for discussion. So let me go to the next one. So other things we do have in the room are church records, unpublished materials, and miscellaneous items. As far as church records, we do have a collection from the First Presbyterian Church of Elizabeth. So one of the materials that gets heavily used and we get requests for all the time is the record book of the First Presbyterian Church, which is a hand-transcribed copy of their original records. Now, the records are listed as 1668 through 1960. The reality is the record only goes as far back as, I believe, 1770. The original record books were lost when the church was raided and burned down by the British, so during the American Revolution. So anything older than that, we're not really going to have the records for, but anything around the early 1770s, 1772, 1773, we may have some information there. It includes the founding of the church, membership information, pew holders, baptismal, and predominantly burial and death records. We also received, sorry, in 2018, we also received from the First Presbyterian Church and the Old First Historic Trust the secular collection that they held. Most of the religious material was sent down to the Presbyterian Historical Society, um, Historical Archive down in Philadelphia. The secular collection was transferred to the library. Now, that contains books, documents, information covering the history of Elizabeth. There's images, newspaper clippings. There are quite a few family Bibles, and one of the files that was given to us is duplicate copies of marriage and death records from the early 1800s through late 1970s. There are some gaps, though. Part of those collections that were transferred to us were the Ogden Family Bible, which is a Geneva Bible published in 1599 in London prior to the King James Version. It was the property of John Ogden, which is considered John the Pilgrim Ogden. He was one of the founders of Elizabethtown, and it also belonged to his descendants. There are pages that contain records of births, marriages, deaths that were handwritten by family members. And we also did receive the Caldwell Family Bible, which is a Bible published in 1770 that belonged to Reverend James Caldwell, who we all know from the American Revolution, and his descendants. That Bible also contains notes, records of births, marriages, and deaths of family members. Now, access to those Bibles, we tend to limit access to it because they are in such delicate shape. What we did do was when we received the Bibles, one of the first things I did was I did scan all the pages that have any handwriting on them. So if anybody is interested in those or is doing research on them, they can just email us, and we can just send you those digital files so that you can see everything that's been handwritten on the Bibles. Very rarely, usually descendants of the families have requested access to them, and we have accommodated them. But it's pretty far and few between that we actually let touch them because, like I said, they are really delicate. They are older. And most of the interest is on those handwritten records more than anything else. We also, for St. John's Episcopal Church, we do have copies of the old records of births, christenings, marriages, and deaths from 1750 and 1850s. Again, this was another hand-transcribed record copy of the records for the church. Otherwise, if material is not included within those books, then we have to direct people to actually contact St. John's Episcopal to see what they have available. We also do contain various copies of the book that I think most researchers know about, which is the inscriptions of tombstones at the First Presbyterian and St. John's Church burial grounds. And all of our copies actually contain the original maps in them that show you exactly where the burial plots are located on the properties. And especially if you're doing research on ancestors from St. John's, one of the funny anecdotes we have from them is when you contact them, sometimes they'll tell you, no, this person's not buried there. But then the researcher will contact the library and we whip out the map and we'll be like, well, yeah, they are. The problem is that the burial is underneath the new extension of the building. They weren't moved. They're still underground there. So the markers are gone. But we can kind of use those maps to give them an idea of where exactly on the property it's located. Now, one of the good things that we received when I first came into this department in 2014 is there is an existing digital Excel file that compiled all the African-American slaves that were buried at the First Presbyterian Church's graveyard. The person who actually initially put that together was the caretaker of Boxwood Historical Site, and she made sure to email me a copy so researchers have access to it through us. Currently, Siloam Hope First Presbyterian Church and Old First Historic Trust are working to try to locate and identify some of the descendants of these individuals and get more information on them. The plan is to build a memorial to them on the grounds of the graveyard. So we also do have St. Elizabeth's Episcopal Church records. Now, St. Elizabeth Episcopal Church was built out of 4 previous churches. So this collection we received in 2018, 2019. And the collection contains materials on St. Augustine's Episcopal Church, Christ Church, Trinity Episcopal Church, and Church of the Resurrection. all of which were predecessors to St. Elizabeth. The collection is mainly a lot of vestry records, Bibles, and items like that, but it does contain some obituaries and membership records for the different churches. So that's pretty interesting collection to kind of go through too. One of the more newer things we also received was we received Evergreen Cemetery blueprints and maps. In 2019, we were contacted by the Essex County Department of Parks and Recreation that they had all these maps of the original cemetery and all the expansions that list all the different burial plots with the names, the family names of the people buried in them. And those were actually transferred to the library in 2019. So, and on top of those, some of the unpublished materials and miscellaneous materials we do have in the collection, we have files, the Pearson family scrapbooks, for example, that were donated to the library that cover the 1900s through 1930s. We have McGee family documents going as far back as 1733. We have from Dr. Neil Rosenstein, who wrote the books on David Narr, the first Jewish mayor of Elizabeth and the grandees of New Jersey. He gave us all of his original research materials. It contains multiple family trees, marriage records, death records, familial records. But the one thing I give everybody warning for, most of that collection is in Hebrew, and nobody on our staff can actually read Hebrew. So we're currently looking for a volunteer that can translate most of this stuff for us, so we have transcripts on what they are. Unfortunately, Dr. Rosenstein just gave it to us as is. So that's an ongoing project we have. We also have some older published materials on families such as the Carpenter family, the Cooper family, the Ogden family, and one other collection that I actually do enjoy, and I get a lot of people don't know it exists here because the collection hasn't been fully inventoried and it hasn't been cataloged yet, but we did receive in 2017 scrapbooks that contain images and names of the children that were housed at the Janet Memorial Home Orphan Asylum, and this was during 1922 through 1951. The collection was actually put together by two people who actually were raised, who lived for a time and grew up in Janet Memorial, and they collected all the information they could find and they put together these two scrapbooks. One is newspaper articles about the different kids and activities, and as the children grew out of the system and what they went on to do in their lives and so on. So there's going to be newspaper clippings on that. The other one is a scrapbook that's just full of photographs with all the kids' names. It has names of some of the caretakers, the family members that volunteered with Janet Memorial. So that's a pretty interesting collection that most people don't know that we have. So I'm going to move on now to show you the new local history reading room. So this room will be opening to the public in October 2021. Now, originally the room was supposed to be constructed by July 26th, but because of COVID and just fabrication and deliveries, we won't be installing the glass walls until this coming Monday is actually when they're coming into the walls. So this just gives you a vantage view of what the room, basically where it's going to be and what the setup is going to be. So the new local history reading room is just off of the emergency exit to the local history archives, which is this door over here in the center of the image. You can kind of see that's Lady Elizabeth hanging next to the door. We had a question if it's the lighting that she looks so dark. No, Lady Elizabeth Carteret needs to be cleaned. She needs a very serious bath and cleaning. She hasn't been cleaned, shellacked, or anything since the 1970s. So she's become pretty dark just from the buildup of dirt over the years. So one of the projects we have planned, hopefully for the coming year, is to raise funds to go send her, to have her cleaned, professionally cleaned, and then the frame, there's some damage to the frame that needs to be repaired. But if you notice on the back, there is a brick wall that's the original brick wall from the 1911, 1912 construction. We actually, by accident, created that wall. On the second picture, there used to be a leak in the ceiling just next to our staff elevator. And when they decided to kind of remove all the damaged plaster that was there, we found this beautiful original brick wall. So I convinced our director and our board and our head of maintenance, everybody fought me on it, to actually remove all the plaster. So the back wall of the room will be this brick with, and we already added some trim on the ends. There will be a glass solid wall that runs along this end here. In between these archways, there'll be glass from floor to ceiling. And then where these images are taken is where the main entrance to the room will be. So once the room is built, it will be available by appointment only. Due to the size of the space, we're not allowed to have more than 10 people at any given time in the room. So to limit and make sure that we're keeping within those numbers, we're doing appointments only once the room is open. So appointments will be scheduled 2 weeks in advance, again, because of scheduling needs. We have to make sure the staff is available and there's nothing conflicting with the appointment. And appointments will be available for 1.5 hour shifts, Mondays through Fridays. I list the shift times there. So shifts would begin at 10 a.m., 12 p.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. Researchers are permitted to schedule 2 back-to-back appointments. We're not limiting how many appointments you can do in a week or anything like that. We just have to make sure that we leave enough space so that if you're there for an hour and a half and somebody else is coming in at 12 and you're leaving at the hour and a half, that we have time to take the materials and bring them back into the archive room. So anybody wishing to use the space or use any of the materials, they can, beginning in October, they can call the local history department and speak to one of the staff and we can schedule an appointment for you. These are just other views of the space. So you see there's still materials in there that they're doing the construction. And you can see, especially in this lower picture, it's lit up so you can see into local history archives. So that's now an emergency exit. That's going to be the access point into the room. Basically, when you come to do research, it would be similar to Plainfield Public, where you wouldn't go beyond this door. You would come into the local history reading room space and staff would bring the materials out to you and then put them back at the end of your visit. And these are just additional images of the angles of the space. I think that's it for that.